Hey, it's Unique History Channel. We're going to be doing a reading from My Struggle by Vladimir ZHIRINOVSKY. We're reading Part 6, Politics and Life. The Second World War left the USSR and the United States in unequal positions. Victor and vanished in a war faced by the same of the reconstructing their shattered economy. Countries that suffered compared to less, in particular Sweden and the United States, became prosperous by creating consumer societies that created and satisfied the demands of the marketplace. They devoured a significant portion of profits, leading inevitably to a fall in the growth of the gross national product. It was the same old story. The rich grew richer and the powerful more powerful. Incomes became stratified as profits increased because of expanding markets, not because of improving production. The pursuit of new markets to dumping goods on credit and thus financial enslavement to purchasers. Some countries, notably Japan and South Korea, following the advice of their liberal parties, chose an effective avoidance of post-war ruin. Rather than begging for the leftover crumbs to improve the population's standard of living, they reconstructed industry and expanded production. These steps led to the elimination of unemployment and a growth in gross national product. The Soviet Union, its land devastated, its housing and stock economy in ruins, overcame a difficult period of reconstruction. Agriculture, the foundation of the Russian economy, was sapped. Our former allies knew of our weaknesses, and from them arose a threat to our country. Winston Churchill had predicted the revival of the Soviet Union and its transformation into a superpower. This predicted the turn of events that didn't suit the United States, which had profited at the expense of others during World War II, since its chance for dominance by weakening or even destroying the USSR. Thus threatened from abroad, the Soviet Union could not concrete wholly on reconstruction, renewal, and improvement of its aged and decrepit technical base. But within the incredible effort, the basic problems of production were resolved and the foundations was laid for achieving the future self-sufficiency in defense. Nevertheless, the light industry and the agriculture fell further behind. Evident was also a notable decline in the genetic potential of our people, with young men, the flower of the nation, dying and the birth rate falling and the elderly become overworked. The USSR did not demand sufficient reparations from a defeated Germany, and the return of equipment received from the United States to the Lend-Lease took its toll on our resources. According to the lease agreement, the equipment had to be returned in working condition, but once restored, the machines which the lenders didn't need were destroyed before audiences of Soviet soldiers. This waste prompted Stalin to stop returning loaned machinery to the United States. In retaliation, the United States put forward an additional claim of $2 billion for unreturned equipment, an amount which Stalin replied had been fully paid in Russian blood. Leonid Brezhnev, however, acknowledged this indebtedness, and our country began paying the United States $30 million annually. Meanwhile, the party's commanding role grew stronger and Super Elite emerged. During the Brezhnev period, the dependent mentality of the government, which strove to buy finished products from abroad in return for raw materials, created an artificial stagnation in the Soviet Union. The need became obvious for a new thinking in politics as well as the economy. Deviating from course set by the Politburo, the country's new and competent leadership proclaimed perestroika, or reconstruction, but soon proved incapable of working out a new and effective economic strategy. On advice from abroad, a Swedish-American model of the consumer society was adopted, one ill suited to a country of such as ours, which suffers from chronic shortages. The foreign prescription proved ruinous. Stripped of the motive force behind a market economy, overproduction of goods, and thus competition, the Soviet Union embodied only destructive aspects of consumer society. So speculation, along with the manipulative reselling of goods and consequent weakness of our marginal industrial enterprises. A drop in productivity occurred, followed by inflation and hyperinflation. The consequences of our government's faulty strategy were prompted from the outside, but orchestrated from within by leaders who were naive, crudish, or criminal, in many cases profited through gifts or bribes. Instead of firm, purposeful, and effective leadership, the country got politically uncertainly squabbling in upper ranks of the government and political games. Unrestrained inflation and declining production accelerated our political disintegration into ambitious, greedy, and unreliable sovereign states. Perestroika proceeded without any direction and with no strategic plan for political transformation, no concrete program for economic reform. The government failed to fulfill its obligation. It failed to guarantee by controlling the output of basic consumer goods the survival of all levels of society, nor has it been able to maintain its borders or to prevent the squandering of its precious resources. Speculation and criminality have grown at an unprecedented pace. Looting, pilfering, and dissipation of Russia's valuable resources have been rampant, committed not only by the mafia, but by a Russian government, which, with manifold absence, has been given away almost for the asking a third of our natural resources to sovereign states of the so-called near abroad. Yet, despite abuses that have been brought to the country to near ruin, the economic crisis, and the population to the brink of poverty, Russia still has a strong future. According to statistical data specialists, among all newly formed sovereign states, only Russia possesses the material conditions to realistically weather the economic storm. Russia possesses priceless human resources, wonderful specialists whose work is the envy of the world. Government financing of most of the promising branches of industry will spur self-sufficient production for our industrial needs while earning hard currency. Rather than selling licenses for exploration abroad and buying the output back of the triple cost in hard currency, it is more profitable to arrange quickly for the production of manufactured goods, of which we already have a significant number, that would exceed world standards. Such goods be consumed at home, with the surplus sold to the near and far abroad at appropriate profit. We must stop the base practice of trading with our neighbors at the discount prices, if not for free, or on credit that runs forever. We must cut short the transfer of hard currency abroad and the deceptive despots in foreign banks of money earned by exporting goods. These are sins committed by high-ranking members of our democratic government and documented or so he claims by Vice President Alexander Rutulsky. Concrete statistical data provides a realistic idea of chances for Russia as compared to other former Soviet republics to escape the current crisis. Russia, which occupies 76% of the former Soviet Union, possesses its own territory, the overwhelming share of mineral and raw materials on the continent. According to 1990 figures, Russia extracted 92% of the Soviet Union's oil, 70% of its natural gas, 57% of its coal, 46% of iron ore, 60% of bauxite, 90% of nickel and tungsten, 95% of its tin, 59% of its copper, and 54% of molybdenum, 62% of its antimony, and 80% of its asbestos, 100% of its apatite and diamonds. In the Soviet Union, Russia enjoyed a monopoly in most branches of machine construction, metallurgy, and in the wood pulp industry. Yet for decades, Russia's resources have been sold very cheaply in relation to world prices. When perestroika began, Russian imports amounted to less than 8% of its gross national product. Of all the Soviet republics, Russia uses mainly its own resources in production and therefore maintains the greatest capacity for starving off an economic crisis. It remains the most promising economic partner for foreign investors alone and is capable of providing guarantees to conscientious entrepreneurs who seek economic cooperation in a mutually beneficial basis. Further improvement in Russia's economy is hindered by uneven development of its industry, especially our own hypertrophied heavy industry, which accounted for 75% of production, but with an output of only 25% devoted to consumer goods. To the defense complex went some 60% of machine construction. During perestroika, we therefore needed thoughtfully to reorient the defense industry towards civilian production while maintaining high technology instead, because of thoughtlessness, evil intent, or the bidding of outsiders. An awkward, unsystematic, and self-seeking policy of military conversion emerged that damaged these high-tech enterprises. Helpless and unqualified leadership at the center has resulted in a sharp decline in mining and oil production for the basis of all production. Workers in this field can barely satisfy the country's needs for these resources and haven't themselves the means to improve productively, let alone to provide for themselves. Even while producing a product highly profitable in world prices, they find themselves worse off than less developed regions. For more COPEX, according to the 1990 data, 68% of Russia's gross national product was sold to former Union republics, frequently on permanent credit. These newly sovereign states will only not fail to say thank you, but they also criticize Russia for its alleged imperialist attitudes. In what kind of empire, other than a Russian one, would these imperialists give out thoughtfully and free their most precious resources while living under worse conditions than the fraternal nations they supposedly colonized? Is Russia's connection to its friendly republics necessarily permanent? Let's examine this question. Isolate the gas systems of the republic, and the supply of gas to Russia would still continue to function reliably. Despite the fact that a significant proportion of underground gas is stored in Ukraine, the Russian system is sufficiently self-contained and maneuvered to preserve its reliability. Practically all Russian consumers obtain their gas from pipelines located entirely on the Russian territory. There is one exception: gas to the northern Caucasus is supplied by a system that passes through Ukrainian territory, but the system is so short that in extreme case it could be rerouted onto Russian territory. Indeed, despite the cutback on oil extraction, Russia will never find itself in a position so desperate that it cannot remedied by merely ceasing the exporting of oil, where it is sold almost as a gift. Russia will not only be able to satisfy its own needs, it will always have been enough oil to sell at world prices in the export market. Russia's coal industry has suffered because about 40% of the resources allocated for its support has been invested in the mines of the Donbass region. A early investment without significant portion went to Kazakhstan, while Russia's oil and coal regions were given starvation rations. Miners of the Don region, despite under Ukrainian administration, have appealed to Russia for help. The time has come to change immediately and decisively the investment of our coal industry. Russian mines will supply the equipment they need: steel cables, steel reinforcement, and conveyor lines, high-pressure hoses, batteries, and cable communications necessary to safeguard lives of the miners and increase coal production. Russian miners will then not long remain in debt. Russia has the vast resources and factories necessary to produce non-ferrous metal. Indeed, it has enough to roll non-ferrous sheet metal to satisfy 80% of its needs. Crude is poor in manganese and chlorium ore, but both elements are great in the worldwide demand. With help from the center, we can organize bilateral agreements to remedy the shortage. Russia accounted for 45% and 100% of machine production, 100% of combined harvesters, 76% of turbines, 81% of oil production, and 62% of excavators, and so on. The breach in the inter-republic relations, while not catastrophic, affecting this production did not cause output to decline. Several machine enterprises required reorientation because they continue to produce outmoded goods instead of increasing the output of spare parts, which they have been in short supply. It is also necessary to focus on the production of agricultural machinery on equipment actually needed by changing that sector. Our agricultural resources are together sufficient to satisfy our needs, even though through grain and potato losses have run high with every harvest. Road improvements have been made, and there is catastrophic lack of the necessary technical equipment in an already overtaxed local industry. To encourage the employees of the urban industrial enterprises to cultivate their individual and collective market plots, we should put them in direct contact with large farm holdings. Russia is so self-sufficient in electricity, it supplies its energy cheaply to former Soviet republics. Its power stations operate above capacity, leading to the accelerated amortization of generating equipment. Reducing the power supply to newly sovereign states and charging higher rates will preserve our generating equipment and permit its modernization. The main supplier of the continent's wood products is Russia, but we need to start selling our wood at current world prices. We need to upgrade both our logging equipment and wood processing technology. Moreover, we'd be better off selling such manual goods such as furniture, plywood, paper, instead of present raw materials and semi-finished products. To economize on timber and preserve the environment, we likewise need to start recycling paper. France, for example, produces a third of its paper from recycled materials. Finally, as a major producer of raw materials to the chemical industry, Russia could easily step in and satisfy the demands of those companies previously supplied by Kazakhstan. That, in brief, is an economic snapshot of Russia. In the former Union republics, the economic picture is significantly worse. Ukraine indebtedness for reconstructing its industrial sector by the beginning of 1999 reached 65 billion rubles. Wear and tear on its industrial equipment precludes any increase in productivity. Moreover, Ukraine is short of many raw materials as well as energy resources such as oil, gas, and electricity. Depending entirely on Russia for these essential supplies, Ukraine generally lacks the means to pay. Belarusia's monopoly producer of certain types of machinery, harvesters, potato planters, potato diggers, fertilizer machines, large dump trucks, oversized tires, synthetic threads for cord fabric. Its manufacturing equipment, however, does not match the needs of its internal market. 60 to 97% of its products are exported beyond the newly sovereign states, and Belarusia does not have resources necessary for a costly retooling, nor does it have the advanced technology demanded by the times. The deorientation of its former ties with the republics has also been disastrous to the economy. Although Kazakhstan is a republic and oriented towards the production of raw materials, its industrial potential can only be strengthened by a significant investment in this newly sovereign state cannot afford. Well developed in the production of copper, zinc, and titanium, ferrochronium, lead, powder, and several other minerals, Kazakhstan still falls short of meeting its productional needs. Many of its factories are idle for a lack of essential parts. Other less profitable factories are labor-intensive polluters and largely in a state of disrepair. Isolated as a result of its independence, the new Kazakh state lacks resources and workers necessary for redesigning and redirecting its industry. Central Asian republics have significant reserves of raw materials and that have greatly increased the output of certain products, mercury, antimony, turbine grease, and other materials. But the significant disproportion that exists between its employment needs and vacancies should lead the employment and drop in living standards. For as rapid industrialization requires, Central Asian countries lack both resources and qualified personnel. Further developing these countries would require constant balance of imports and exports, found in only stable zone of trade. In the Caucasus, production is devoted to seamless metal-coated oil pipes, and in Georgia, high-tense strength pipes. Azerbaijan produces a significant share of oil exportation equipment. It produces 100% of the former Soviet Union's propylene glycol used for making liquors and 90% of sulfone used as synthetic cleaning agents. Armenia concentrates on the manufacture of aluminum foil, accessory fibers for cigarette filters, and high-capacity generators. Azerbaijan enjoys the greatest potential for an independent economic system with its military actions against its neighbors. The Baltic republics, which alternated between importing raw materials, satisfy their energy and raw materials, mainly through Russia. According to 1991 statistics, Lithuania receives 74% of ferrous metal and 97% of its non-ferrous metal, 77% of its gas, and 75% of its raw chemical materials from Russia. Estonian factories lack similarly local resources. Again, according to 1991, the shale extracted in the Kolta Jarve amounted to only 10% of the country's chemical output. Because goods produced by the Baltic industry don't enjoy much demand in the West, the collapse of the economic ties between the former Union republics has proven ruinous for the Baltic states. After having ceased industrial enterprises built with the help of all peoples of the Soviet Union, the Baltic republics cannot even maintain their former standard of living. Depending entirely on Russia for electricity, they are unable to pay for it. Moreover, they have to face up to the grim fact that the West, which pushed them towards independence, can not be counted on for material assistance. Summing up, I could say that all these former Soviet republics, Russia will, assuming its sensibility, managed from within, had the easiest time surviving as a sovereign state. If our incomplete leadership stops the systematic plundering of these resources, we can raise production sharply and regain our status as a superpower. But to achieve that status again, we must change the country's leadership with free elections and install an authoritarian regime that controls from the center. This is where I come in. We need to establish the center control over defense, transportation, communications, as well as the administration of energy resources and protection of the environment. Economic decisions making we should leave to the discretion of local authorities representing territorial as opposed to national subdivisions. Further, we need to close our borders and establish strong customs systems. We need to gradually reestablish our previous borders, not violently, of course, through the politics and economics without bloodshed or military force. By offering the same economic conditions to the countries near us, we do that to those distant from us. We'll make two choices clear: former republics either drag out our miserable society and crumbles from the world, return to our superpower fold. However, Russia must remember previous bitter experience, be sure to always take care of and protect the welfare of our own people. It is a fact we have always not looked after our own. For example, as we stand guiltfully in treatment of our invalids, we have neglected our own health and failed to ease the way for our wives to fill their greatest act of replenishing our population. In the years of perestroika, our people, especially the elderly and invalids, were deprived of necessary medicines. Invalids were deprived of personal contact, of society, of transportation, of housing. A country blessed with resources, Russia has been reduced to the final humiliation of begging. The scared debt of any civilized state is to provide for the weak and unfortunate when it gains power. This will be one of the primary tasks of my liberal Democratic Party. I have no doubt that a quick recovery for Russia's economy, temporarily ruined by so-called Democrats. I believe in the strength and goodwill of the Russian people, and they in me. My support in Russia comes from simple citizens who range from Cossacks in Krasnodar and the presidents of the Urals or Siberia, Muscovites, the people of St. Petersburg or Archangel. I know that I enjoy significant support, and in time I will win the Russian presidency with about 40 million votes. 3 years ago, when I was practically unknown, I received 6 million votes. An independent sociological service of Muscovites standing in lines outside of stores in November 1992, I received 29% of the vote for the president. The remaining candidates, including Boris Yeltsin, did not command 10%. What could be better proof? I received 5% more votes than any other candidate, indicating a clear chance for my victory in the election to come. But even if we win, we still have to work hard to reestablish a narrow way of life for our vast state. We will need a new constitution. For that, we need a Congress. It would therefore be better to begin by electing a president and granting him the possibility of enacting, by personal decree, a provisional constitution. After a new constitution is in effect, a new parliament should be elected, one whose political views correspond to those of the president, thus creating a unified team. The government should be formed of representatives whose views correspond to those of the president and the new parliament. This new, friendly, united political leadership could continue reforms and serious modifications. It could begin by reforming the administrative and state structures, and it could define state borders and relations with neighbors. It could put the entire house in order with price, tax, and monetary reforms beneficial to the population. It could reform army, science, culture, and education, and guarantee minimum conditions for the survival of pensioners, infants, and others who cannot participate in the market economy and will suffer the most from its distortions. The new president, parliament, and government, new borders for Russia, will allow essentially the former borders of the USSR. The economic reform won't destroy the state sector, but rather improve while encouraging a private sector. A sensible tax policy, one in Russia's interest as well as the consumer protection, will be instituted. Our financial policy will eliminate money laundering, improve the health of the monetary system. By establishing law and order, we reduce crime sharply, and eliminate nearly all 3,000 groups that operate throughout the country and are known through the world as the Russian Mafia. We will stop the murderers, thieves, and economic criminals who are the plunderers of Russia's property. Brighter horizons lay before us, that I believe. I also believe that 1995 was the last year of deceleration, instability, and uncertainty. With 1996 will come a positive forward movement, a new political leadership laying the foundation for a new and better domestic and foreign policy. Moving ahead without discrimination, we will then satisfy the interests of all of our citizens, ensuring a good life for everyone in our Russia. One might regard all this fantasy as a dream. Indeed, making it a reality won't be easy. We don't promise champagne and caviar, only a peaceful and fulfilling life, one in which a pensioner has a breakfast of Sandwich of cheese, butter, caution, a cup of coffee or cocoa. Lunch contains salad, vegetable soup, chops, and fruit juice, and a dinner of puree and potatoes with a glass of kefir. In this life, pensioners can have tea and cookies as a snack to enjoy fruit occasionally. With enough money to go to the bathhouse and movies, to pay for an apartment, maybe to buy gifts for his grandchildren. I believe such pleasure will support us and be content. With a roof overhead and always something to eat and to wear, the minimum needs of the pensioner will be met. Under our regime, a proportion of our population will live quite well and have the opportunity to work honestly. When the time comes, support themselves comfortably in old age. We'll have no more revolutions or perestrojkas in our country. These changes I am proposing, far from requiring decades, can be accomplished quickly with the help of all honest people of Russia, who today vastly outnumber the thieves. To end the immoral free-for-all and secure ourselves a good lives in the year ahead, we need a new geopolitical formula to guide Russia's existence and development. A peaceful life will require us to end once and for all the danger from our southern borders, and it will help meeting nations bordering Russia, eliminating tension, causing war and conflict. Because we are all at the mercy of nature, we must join forces to save ourselves from against natural disasters and pollutions. All disputes, whether about sewage, land, housing, employment, recreation, education, or military service, should be decided by the civil society without violence. To everyone else, the same laws and commandments will apply. Whether Christian, Islamic, or Judaic, these commandments are universally known. Thou shalt not kill, steal, or cheat can be found in the folklore's tales, homilies, morals, and in everyday life. The state cannot prevent unhappy families, but it should have the powers to remove a mistreated family, if only temporary, to an orphanage or boarding school. We should at the same time emphasize foster homes, love over orphanages, letting every child be raised in a home as a part of a family. Although we won't always succeed, we must keep to a minimum the number of children who are wards of the state. The happiness of a particular individual is in the end a goal of any political program. Widespread self-sacrifice is useless if we end up all unhappy. What we need is a sensible way of life so that every Russian is content in happiness and joy of some people, on the basis of any country's well-being. Every waking day, every ounce of our work, every moment of our political life should have behind it the noble goal of helping rather than destroying. I don't see a crying revolution in Russia, rather I see a proud Russia with glorious tradition of its army, talented engineers, industrialists, create a new model of new technology. Behind in electronics or computers, we shouldn't chase Japan. We're better off instead making use of foreign expertise. But we do have branches in electronics where we could already enjoy a worldwide lead, which would constitute our monopoly. We are behind in automobile manufacture, but we can compensate with our space and aviation programs. Our country, moreover, being rich with forests and timber, should have the best furniture and paper in the world. Yet today we seek to import top-grade wood. We need to keep our gas and oil for our own consumption and not let it flow out day and night over pipelines to foreign countries. Our economic policy must be sensible with clear priorities for development. The new Russia will be equipped with new factories, engines, ecologically clean machinery. In cities with populations of 500,000 to 1 million, we don't need megacity with 10 million inhabitants. Our new Russia will not disturb nature, will sensibly use its waterways, forests, steppes, and deserts and mountains, will employ its resources. In the interest of humanity, we must give scientists the means to develop their ideas in Russia without having to go abroad, foster conditions to encourage innovators, inventors, autocrats, creative minds tinkering with any new technology and promote the growth of industries. We have to develop trade and reestablish the traditions of Russian merchant class, who will then, from abroad and overseas, bring us whatever we may lack while exporting our own surplus. This is the Russia I see. A Russia with the strongest army in the world, strategic troops, missiles with multiple target warheads, hidden deep underground for our defense. Our military space station, our spaceship run, and our engineering rockets will serve as our matchless shield, but in no circumstances will we claim world domination and interfere in the affairs of other people. Ours will be a new Russia, stripped of its demons and fantasies, entangled in religion and ideology, with the Christian religion holding dominant and no alien religions to serve the outlaws of our younger generation. The Russian Orthodox religion will assume an appropriate, important, and though tolerant position. Removed from the agenda of the new Russia will be the question of nationality with no discrimination because of national origin. Our new Russia will be a secular state based on law, with a strong presidential regime and a multi-party parliament that enacts legislation that can stand the best of time. This constitution will represent and respect everyone, young or old. It will have a unifying symbol for the whole country: black, yellow, and white flag. Russia will flutter atop of all state institutions in all regions and villages of our huge fatherland. There will be a single hymn for the entire country, a state, a language of inter-ethnic communications, Russia, and a single currency, the ruble. And the new Russia will prevail a single financial and transportation system and self-government for all regions and territories, allowing the resolution of local questions through local dumas, state assemblies, and legislative administration organs rather than running to Moscow for every little unsolved issue. Okay, thank you.